Hi, this is Brian with Prophetless Media and Post, and today we're going to talk about tracking masks and using them for compositing. I got a question on the surface tracker video I did recently, and the question was related to how I added the animation to the mask and used the mask to composite the original finger back over the effect. As with most things in Fusion, there are a lot of different ways to approach things. So in this video, I'll go over several different approaches to tracking masks and how you can use them in compositing. So here we are in Fusion, and you can see I have a basic composition set up. So we have this logo that we added and tracked it in and added it to the street so that it looks like it's part of the street. And we have this car that comes over the logo, and what we want to do is be able to mask that out. We have our media in here, which is our original clip, which you can see is this drone shot with some rotation. What I did was I added a tracker, and if I just go to the beginning, you can see, oops. What I tracked was right here, and I have these little small trackers, and right here at this cross. One thing I'll note is if we zoom out a little bit here, we'll look at the frame size. The frame size can be really important when it comes to tracking. Now the composition is set to this 2560 by 1440, and that's what we tracked. So the reason this is important is that if we're adding an element to the scene that's not this frame size, which is what we tracked, then the tracking information may not work the way we expect it to. So for example, we have our logo, which is only 300 by 300. And so to make this work nicely, we need to reformat that so that it fits the same size as the image that we tracked. And so the easiest way to do that is add a background node over a merge. And so if I look at the merge, you can see now we have the actual frame size that we tracked with our logo. Inside the background, what I did was I just brought down the alpha. So it came in like this. I brought down the alpha. So that way I can retain the alpha from here. I put that into the background of the merge, and this is our comp. Then we added a transform, and that transform, if we look through the merge, you can see I transformed it, rotated, and scaled it to fit in this section. Then we added that transform into the tracker. And inside the tracker, if we go to operation, you can see we have it set to match move, and I have it set to foreground only. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want just the animated logo so I can do any kind of color correction, or if I want to add blur or anything like that, I have more options. And then we merge it over the top, and inside the merge, we have it set to overlay, and then I blended it down a little bit just to make it blend in. Okay, so now what we want to do is we have this car that's coming through, and we want to rotoscope this. Now, in this particular shot, this is only a handful of frames. It might be just as easy to make your shape and then hand animate just through here. But I want to show you how you can use the tracker to speed this up. So let's add in a tracker. Okay. Oop, I don't want it there. I'm just over here. And then we're going to connect our media into the tracker, and then let's put the tracker up. So let's talk about the tracker and how it works as far as connecting to masks. One thing to be aware of is how Fusion works with a reference frame and center points. So when I add a polygon in, the default position, if we look at the center right here, and you can see it right here, is 0.5, 0.5. And then we can draw a shape. And then anytime we do the animation, we're going to be moving this center point. I mean, we can move the mask too, but typically when we're going to add tracking information, we're going to use that center point. And so the reason this is important is because the tracker uses that same center point of 0.5, 0.5 to set up the reference. So if I go over here to, if you go inside the tracker, go to operations, go under match move settings, we have this reference point. By default, it's at start. And what that means is at this frame right here, the animation will start with a center point of 0.5, 0.5 as it relates to the image. So that means anything that has a centered transformation of 0.5, 0.5, so anything you draw on that frame or anything that you add on that frame, as long as it hasn't been moved anywhere, its center is 0.5, 0.5, and its location is where you want it, it will track through the entire shot and be the way you expect it. But in this example, we can see I drew this polygon at frame 1530. And as soon as I grab this tracker and drop it in, watch what happens to the mask in the center. You can see that it shifts over here. And the reason that happened is because we have the tracker set to start. So right now it's at 0.5 at the very beginning. And as it goes, it's changing. So by the time it gets to here, it's not going to be 0.5. That's not going to be the center point. So if we can set the reference frame to be 1530 here, then our mask will not shift. So inside the tracker, we have a couple of different options for the reference frame. We have select time, start and end. So select time is the frame which you start your tracking on. For this example, this tracker here, I started it on frame 1530, tracked to the end, and then tracked to the beginning. Start will be the first frame. Start and end is a combination of the start and the end is the last frame. So let's set the reference frame to select time, which will center the tracker animation at frame 1530. So since I started the track on frame 1530, I also added my polygon on frame 1530. It was centered on 1530 and my location is correct. If I take a look at my polygon right now, it should be perfectly square to the car again. And if I click on there it is. And it's centered at 0.5. So it's in the right location, and now it'll track through. So with a little foresight, this isn't really an issue. And as I'll show you in a little bit, this is not so much an issue with the masks, but when adding a still frame or other media, the reference frame can be really important. Also, if you're using the same tracker over and over again, it would be useful to be able to select different reference frames depending on what you need. So with that said, I wanted to mention that it'd be worth your time to take a look at the Reactor tool set, if you already haven't, which is a free plugin set on the We Suck Less forum. And in the Reactor tools, they have a tool called the Tracker Plus. And that can set the reference frame to whatever you need, as well as other options that are useful that we'll talk about a little bit later in this video. I'll put a link in the description if you want to check it out. So anyway, let's go over here and let's add our tracker. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller on the back, and then, yeah, just something like that. Let's go over to our tracking. I'm going to change the adaptive mode to every frame, and that's because the shape of the car changes a little bit as it goes through. Let me fit that up. And let's just track through. So I'm on frame 1530. Let's track to the end. Okay, and then go back over frame 1530, track to the beginning. Okay, great. So now I have this tracking information. So now I want to add a mask and mask out this car. Let's, we're looking at our final composite, and let's just say we're going to make this on frame 1490. And the reason I'm doing this is so I can show you why it's going to offset. And again, it's not a big deal, and I'll show you why. Let's add in a polygon. I'm going to grab a polygon, and I'm going to drop this polygon into the merge. Now what this is going to do is this polygon is going to mask out whatever's in the foreground. So let's add in a mask. I'm just going to do this real rough. And so now we have this mask, but we're not seeing the shape, which means that we need to invert this because we want to cut out the logo wherever the car is. So there's a couple of ways you can do that. You can go inside the polygon, and inside here you can hit invert, and you can see there it is. Another option is inside the merge. So inside the merge, we can go over to settings, and I'm going to turn on apply mask inverted. And I'm going to leave that on because we're going to make several different polygons, and we're going to want that setting to be the same. So now we have that polygon. So now one way we can do this is we can just take our tracker, bring it over here. We'll take our polygon and drop it into the foreground. And we're going to take the tracker and drop it into the merge. Now everything disappeared, and that's because we haven't set up our tracker. So let's go into the tracker, go to operations, and under operation mode, we want to match move, and we want just the foreground. So we only want this information to go onto the polygon. And you can see what just happened. You can see it right there because we have it set to start. The reference frame is going to be centered here, but we drew a mask on frame 1490, which means it's going to shift. Now you would think you could hit select time, right? But that also didn't do it. So if I look here, you can see that that's, I don't know if this is clear, but now it's over here. So it's not actually selecting this frame. And this is another reason to have something like the Tracker Plus in Reactor, because then it won't matter. You can set it yourself. But I'm going to show you a way you don't have to deal with this at all. It's just a matter of operations. Okay, so no matter what I set up on this tracker, it's not going to be right. I can go to start, I can go to end, and that's, where did that push it? It pushed it way out here. So that's not going to work. Now it's not a big deal. There's so say let's put the tracker back to start, and we have our polygon. You can just grab, with the selection tool, select all of your points, and then just reposition it. And that's also a possibility. You can do this. It would be better if you didn't have to, right? Any step you can save would be great. And so now I just moved that over, and we have our tracker set up to match move, and now it should track right through the scene. So now we have a single tracker. Now you can see it doesn't have the rotation or scale, so it's slipping off a little bit, and it's easy enough. I mean, for something like this, you just come in here, and as it gets close to there, and then as it goes through, you can see it's turning a little bit more, and we'll do another keyframe here. And sometimes that's easy enough. You don't really need to do much more than that. And then you're through, and that's it, and you're done. And that's not too bad. Now, if you haven't added your polygon shape ahead of time, and you have your tracking set up like this, you can draw your shape on any frame, and it will line up if you're looking through the final composite. So let me show you how that works. So we already have our tracker set up. And if we add a polygon and then drop that in here, if we look through our final composite, we can just go to any frame. So say we went right into the middle of here, and now I draw my shape. Oops, I gotta select the polygon. But if I draw my shape here, there we go. I have my mask around the car, and the tracking is already set up. Now what happened was we were looking through here to set up our polygon, okay? But what we actually were doing is offsetting it. So if I take a look at the polygon itself, if I look through there, you can see it's way over here. But because we were looking through the tracker and through the entire comp, when we made the shape, we were putting in the right position. So just some ways to understand what's going on here. Okay, and now that's tracked all the way through. Okay, so that's one method of doing it. We can add the tracker inline to match move our polygon, but I'm going to show you another way. So let's pull this out. We need to have that connected still. And I'm going to delete that polygon. So with this method, we can grab the polygon, add it into the merge, and similar to what we just did with the tracker, if we add the animation to the polygon ahead of time, then it won't matter which frame we are in, or we can draw the shape. So again, let's go, I don't know, somewhere like in here, grab the polygon, add the animation to the center. So if I right click on the center here, you can see polygon 1 center, connect to, and that's tracker 1, unsteady position. Now, if I do that, you can see that that center shifted over. That means the animation's already on the polygon, but we haven't drawn the shape yet. So now if I go in here, I can draw the shape. And there we go. And now we have all that tracking information added to the polygon. Now, if I had drawn the shape first, it would have been offset, but you could have done the same thing we did in the first example. You could have grabbed all the points and then shifted it over. So that's another method you can use. Okay, so that's easy enough. But we're only using one tracker, right? But we have a little bit of rotation in this shot. So it would be nice to have that rotation and scale, so maybe we can use less keyframes. So let's take a look at how we can add a second tracker. So I'm going to go back to our tracker 1. And I think we started on frame 1530. And let's add a second tracker. So I'm going to go over to, let's turn match move to none. Go back to trackers. And let's add a tracker. And we're going to turn off tracker 1 because we've already tracked that. We're going to grab tracker 2. And we'll put this one on the windshield. And we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to just make it a little bit smaller. Something like that. Adaptive mode every frame. And then let's track it through. So I'm going to track to the end. Go back to frame 1530, track to the beginning. Okay, great. Let's go into the tracker. I'm going to turn the tracker 1 back on. So now we're going to have scale, rotation, and positioning information that we can use. So the next method we're going to use, we can both use either a single tracker or the multi-tracks, and it can be used in the same way. So the way this works is we're going to add a transform. And so this is going to work the same way as some of the other methods. If the polygon's already drawn, like it is here, it's going to have to be on one of the reference frames for it not to be offset. So let's add in a transform. This polygon was done over here, so it's going to end up being offset. So I'm just going to delete it. And inside this transform, we're going to go to the center, right click, connect to tracker 1, unsteady position. And so now we have this transform that has the animation. So now I can add a polygon here. And because I have the animation already set up, I can look through here. Now I can draw my polygon on whatever frame I need to. So let's go like right here. And I'll draw, whoops, I need to select the polygon. And we'll draw the polygon. Okay, great. And so this is just like the other methods. You can see that we have our mask cut out and animated. But we just added a second tracker. So we have access to the rotation and scale information, which could save us a lot of time with keyframing our polygon. And so we want to use that information. So in order to use this information, we're going to need to add a connection to the pivot, size, and angle also. Now keep in mind, you can also use the first method we did where we put the tracker inline and match move that way. But I want to show you a bunch of ways to do this so you have options depending on your own compositions. So if we go into the transform, we already have center done. We need to do pivot, size, and angle. So we can right click on pivot, connect to tracker 1, and what we wanted was unsteady axis, but it's not here. But we do have steady axis. So another option we have is to set the center, pivot, size, and angle all to the steady position, and then use invert transform. And so that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to take the pivot, we're going to connect tracker 1, steady axis. The center, we're going to have to remove that, and then we're going to go back to connect to tracker 1, and then we're going to go to steady position. Under size, we're going to go size, connect to tracker 1, steady size, and then angle, connect to tracker 1, steady angle. Now the only thing we have to do is click on invert transform, and that should make everything line up. So let's see, we have our polygon. And there we go. And now it's actually rotating too, which will save us a little bit more time when we're doing our composites. And so as with the other methods that we looked into, if for some reason once you add all of the information here, the center, pivot, size, and angle, and your roto shape or your polygon gets offset, you can either move it back into position or you can set all of this information up first and then draw your polygon. Basically, if you have the animation set up and you're looking through the final comp, then you can draw on whichever frame and everything will line up. So now we did all that work in here, and that's kind of a lot to have to do every single time. And that again is why I pointed out the Reactor plugins and specifically the Tracker Plus plugin. So I have this Tracker Plus over here that I've already done. We can take a look at it. And you can see I have that tracking information here. Let's take a look at this. So we see our two trackers. We go to operations. You can see we have a couple other settings here. We have a set current time as reference frame, and we have this export transform. This is really helpful. Let's look at our final comp and say I want this to be the reference frame. Now let me turn that off. All I have to do is go into the Tracker Plus. The reference needs to be set to select time. If it's set to start, I don't think you can't set it. So you need to go to select time, hit set current time, and you can see it's 1569. And now we can export that transform. And if we look at the export transform, you can see we have a couple options. We can do match move or stabilize. We want match move. And then we have type. We have linked or bake. I'm just going to do linked, but if you wanted to, you could bake out that animation into the transform. And we want position, rotation, scaling, and axis. Just hit OK. And now you can see we have this transform. So let's plug that straight in there. And then we're going to add another polygon and add it to there. And in this polygon, we're just going to go in here and now that transform has all the information right here. So now everything's tracked in. That's obviously a lot easier, especially when you have a large comp and you have multiple things that you can use the same tracker for. It'd be nice to be able to use different reference frames. So really handy tool. Anyway, okay. So I'm just gonna delete this for now, and we're just gonna use this one for our final. I want to take a second to talk about what exactly are we doing right here. What we're doing is we're cutting away the logo to reveal underneath. And sometimes that's not what we want. And let me show you what I mean. So let's going to grab a background. We're going to turn the alpha all the way down. And let's take that background and connect it where the media in is. And if we switch this to alpha, you can see this is the alpha of our logo. And what we're doing is we're cutting away the alpha of the logo to reveal underneath. That might be fine, but sometimes, let's turn that off. Sometimes you want it to be the other way around. You actually want to have the media on top, especially if you're doing like a big long composition. You may want to just add the car on top. So to do that would be pretty easy. And let me just show you how that works. So let's disconnect this. And we're going to add in a merge. And this is we want our comp. We want this to be in the background. And then we want this to be in the foreground. So this is our original clip. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take this information here and we're going to cut that out. This time, instead of us cutting out the matte, if I were to take this background and drop it in here, you can see what happens. What we're actually getting out of this merge is the car animated on top by itself. So it's a little bit different way. So depending on what you need to do in your composite, you might need to use this method instead. So we can finish this off. I mean, we can come into the polygon and let me click that. You know, I'd probably do a little bit of this, little blur, and then bring that edge in tighter. And that looks great. Okay, so that's going to do it for this video. If you have any questions or if anything wasn't clear, reach out in the comments and let me know. I try my best to answer everybody's questions when I can. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.